signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That motion carries 5-0. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda, 6A through 6B. Is there any board member that would like to pull any one item off and discuss separately? If not, I would entertain a motion for consent agenda 6A through 6B.
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr. Emmanuel.
I'll second it.
I have a second by Ms. Miller Beach. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That motion carries 5-0. Next on the agenda is to consider and approve the donations. So we've received numerous donations for the Bonner and Bear Cave classrooms. Mr. McEnroy and Mr. Johnson, could we have you just briefly speak to these? Just touching base on what it is.
Sure. This was a fundraiser that we ran where we partnered with these groups and Stewie Cruisers. They received about $2,800 in cash donations to benefit students for school supplies such as headphones, whether it be pencils, pens, dry erase markers that we use, things that can be used at our discretion for the students that may need it the most. So we also received a number, about $200 in donations of school supplies, so notebooks and pens and pencils and crayons and markers. So our community came out in great force to support some of the students that we have at Bonner and Bear Cave. We were very excited to partner with them and hope to continue doing it in the future.
That addresses the Stewie Cruisers Cart Club, the Two Brothers, and the American Legion. Mr. McEnroy, could you address the remaining ones for the Bonner Elementary students and classrooms?
I'm just going to stand up because I can't quite see. So,
Yep.
Yes, Campsite Ice Cream, FedEx, and the Discount Warehouse. Oh, okay. The Campsite Ice Cream and FedEx, those were school supplies. So once again, they did a donation. Both of them were absolutely unexpected. It was kind of basically a knock on our door and here's some school supplies. So the word is getting out that we gladly accept those donations. The Reichel Foods, this was, we wanted to have a staff luncheon in which, especially since we had our second grade team over at Central last year, there were teachers who were brand new that our current Bonner staff didn't really, they knew their names, but they didn't know the face. So we actually had a come together and a chance, and Reichel Foods was very generous for supplying that, as well as SEPTA. SEPTA also provided the pizzas for that as well. And the final one, the Discount Warehouse and Michael Leonard. Basically, Mr. Leonard works at Discount Warehouse. They had an over surplus of stocking caps, gloves, things like that. So we got 2 large boxes, probably about 300 hats. So we're well supplied for the winter time. So
Wow.
once again, very, very generous.
So you did get $200 in ice cream?
$200 in it, not quite ice cream.
It wasn't ice cream, okay, school supplies, got it.
Wow. Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Motion to approve the donation.
I have a motion from Mr. Emmanuel,
I'll second.
a second by Mr. Welch. And this is a roll call vote. So Mr. Emmanuel,
Aye.
Ms. Miller Beach,
Aye.
Mr. Ravenhorst,
Aye.
Mr. Welch,
Aye.
aye for myself. That motion carries 5-0. And thank you to all of the organizations for the generous donations. Definitely benefits our kiddos and our staff. It's unbelievable what our community does for us. So Next on the agenda is to consider and approve John Dubé's extended stay field trip request for the JV varsity volleyball team to travel to Lakeville on October 15th and 16th.
We had expected Coach Zube to be here for this, but in the interest of timeliness, our next board meeting is not until October 11th. So I would suggest that the board move forward, and I will invite Coach Zube to come to our October 11th meeting just to make the formal presentation. But just in the interest of making sure that he can move forward with his plans, I would recommend approval pending his presentation to the board on the 11th. Does that make sense? Okay. I don't have details or the sheet on it. I just know that they want to go to Lakeville, and those are the dates.
This particular field trip is an annual.
Perhaps, yes. It's an overnight trip, and the overnight trips require that they present to the board and get approval.
Yeah, this was a historically standard trip that, barring last year, previous years than that, it was the same, one of two that they do, so
So as far as anyone knows, it's nothing different than.
it's nothing different.
So move.
Well, second.
Can you just tell me the ratio for the chaperones to kids?
I don't have that information.
Okay, but typically what's our requirement for that, 4 to 1, or less than that?
I don't have that information.
Oh, okay.
It's all on the trip sheet, so
Oh, but I'm saying what is our policy?
each
It
one,
just depends.
yep, it depends on the activity and how many students and those kinds of things. So all those specifics are with Coach Zube.
Okay. So,
Any other questions? So I have a motion by Mr. Emanuel, a second by Mr. Ravenhorst. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed? That motion carries 5-0. Next on the agenda is a special education update by Holly Clark, our Director of Special Services.
So to introduce Ms. Clark, this is her third year with us in the district. And we'd like to have her come and just give an update on the status of special education in our district and share with you information about the program that she directs. So I'll pull this up and then she can get started. Hold on a minute, let me get it full screen here.
nice to see you in person, by the way. I
Yeah.
think you've been on TV most of the time, so.
Right.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've been in front of all of you.
Yeah.
So, and I did, I'll just talk about myself for just a second. That's the slide she's trying to get up, because I know some of you have not really met me in person yet. So just kind of recap of who I am, that's my family there, and pretty proud of them. And I'm very grateful for this district and for Ms. Selfers, who, when in my interview, I said, I'm a mom first. And this district and Ms. Selfers has allowed me to be a mom first and then pursue my passion of special education. So anyways, I have 4 kids, Carter, Elizabeth, Preston, and Bristol. And Carter's a senior year this year, so I got the full range of 2nd grade through a senior. We live just outside of Lanesboro, and my husband is the high school principal there. So I've been in the world of administration for a long time now. This is his 17th school year in Lanesboro as the high school principal there. We're originally from South Dakota, and I received all my original special education background and training there. And in South Dakota, it's a non-categorical state, and I'll kind of talk about that in a little bit, but which means as a special ed teacher, you're required to receive training in everything. So when I moved to Minnesota then, I was licensed in EBD, DCD, LD, and then I later went on and got my early childhood special ed and my ASD, so. And then last May, I got my director's of special ed license, my ed specialist degree, and my K-12 principal license. As a special ed coordinator, I work really hard to really emphasize that all of our students are tigers. They're Stewart-Bill tigers. They're not special ed students. They are part of the school district and have the rights as any other student, and it's our job to ensure that we protect those rights. And that's really become my passion over the years. My other duties include vetting of new hires, teacher observations, paperwork compliance, attendance of IEPs, monitoring of special transportation, and training of new staff. This year, just kind of a rundown. This is probably one of the toughest times of year to give you official numbers of special students that we serve through special ed. Right now, and this was last night, probably as of 5 o'clock, we have 363 active files. That means students that we have a file open for. There's 16 in process, does not include the birth to 3, which is serviced through Zen. By December, though, that number will be considerably higher because we're in the evaluation process as we speak. And for example, our early childhood, which is our preschool, the 3, 4s, 4, 5s, last week during our child study meeting on the 17th, we had 5 Help Me Grow referrals. That means referrals from the community, such as doctors, daycare providers, things like that, that are saying, hey, we have a child that's a resident of Stewartville, and we just think you should maybe check them out and offer some support and services. Parents can also put in those Help Me Grow referrals, but they often come from other service providers as well. And then there's some other information there. In the elementary, we've already started our reevaluations this year. We've already started it. That says 2 parent requests, and that's increased now already this year as well. And a big thing this year is we started a new process, which we're just rolling out here in October for that referral for teachers to make to special education. So we have a process of, first they go to the problem solving team, and then from problem solving they go to what we call as child study, and child study is where we determine if we're going to move forward with the special education evaluation. So this has been a new big process. Helping the gen ed teachers know what to look for, what to do, what interventions can I put into place to maybe avoid the process of going to special education, because sometimes just little tricks or little supports can make all the difference in the world, and maybe a student wouldn't need to go through the full evaluation process. In the middle school, high school, we have just started our process as well. We have a couple requests for initial evaluations this year, but we haven't had the signatures yet, so we're moving forward with that. We've already started our reevaluations. A student has to be reevaluated every 3 years, so there's a cycle. Every 3 years you would reevaluate a student to see if they still show a need for special education services. I predict this year we will have over 130 evaluations.
Ms. Clark, could you explain how many hours each evaluation takes?
Yeah, it's a good question. So one evaluation could take anywhere from 5 to 20 hours, and it's a combination of a team. So we have our evaluation managers, which I think I'll talk about in a later slide. They help compile all that paperwork and type up the lengthy reports. They also help do some of the testing. A test such as the Woodcock-Johnson, which shows your ability to do your reading, your math, your writing, all of those things, can take an average of about 3 hours per student, because we look at that base, what is the bottom and what's the top. And to determine that top of what they know, a student has to answer 6 questions wrong in a row quite often, because we want to know that they truly know all of this. So you have a student might get 3 wrong, and then they'll get 2 right, and then they get 3 wrong. So it does take a long time, but it's very comprehensive. We know what they know and don't know. And then if you add speech in there and the IQ testing, adaptive and physical education, all of that takes a good length of time. And we do all of this to the best of our ability while not taking them out of their core instruction. So that's a definite management of time as well. Yeah. So currently in Stewartville School District, we service all of these categories. There's actually 13 identified categories by the state of Minnesota. These are the ones that we currently have within our school district. So developmentally delayed is our early childhood ones. That's kind of a broad term. Just means that they're just not where with their peers right now. Doesn't mean they can't get there, that there's something going on. Just means they need some extra supports to get caught up. Learning disability, this is our more typical struggling with reading, math, writing, things like that. And actually, due to great interventions by the school district, that is probably our least used category now. The WIN program, things like that, they have done a great job to avoid students going into that category. If they do go into that category, there probably truly is learning disabilities such as dyslexia, something like that. Developmentally cognitively delayed, which used to be like our MR, back in the day, mental retardation. We don't use that term anymore, but that's the area. And in Minnesota, that's actually broken into 2 categories. So severely impaired and mild to moderate. Autism spectrum disorder, emotional behavior disorders, which is definitely on the rise and is expected to really be on the rise post-COVID now. Other health impairments could be any medical diagnosis, but you can't just have a medical diagnosis. You have to also show an educational need. And sometimes that gets to be a little bit of a disconnect between the school and the parents. They think, well, my child has ADHD, they qualify for an IEP, but you have to show an educational need for that IEP as well. Blind and visually impaired, physically impaired, developmentally adaptive physical education, and deaf, hard of hearing. The ones with the asterisks means we get supports from the Zumbro Education District for those licensed areas, and they help provide the programming or at least consult with us on how to provide that programming.
So many of those are low incident kinds of disabilities. So if we had to hire a blind and visually impaired teacher or hire a teacher for deaf, hard of hearing, we may have 1 or 2 students in the district who need those services. So we collaborate with ZED, and they service then schools who have students who have those needs. And that allows us then to coordinate those services through ZED. So we could share a staff member with Byron or Casson or Mayfield.
Did that answer?
Just quick, the 363 active files, is that all the kids are just on this campus, or is that including the ones that we have in ZED?
That's just our campus.
So the ones that we send to ZED, that's just another?
That's another, yep. Currently, we have 2.4 early childhood special ed teachers, 4 paras, 1 unfilled, and 1.5 speech pathologists. 1 that primarily does the servicing, and then another 0.5 that comes and helps do all the evaluation. We get a lot more speech evaluations the younger the kiddos are, which is good. Early interventions shows great success. At Bonner, 4 teachers, 3 paras, and 3 unfilled paras. And again, 1.5 speech pathologists, same reason, like the early intervention shows vital. BCI, 5 teachers, 5 paras, and we're fully staffed there, and 1 speech pathologist. Middle school, 5 teachers, 5 paras, 3 unfilled, and a 0.5 speech. And then at the high school, 5 teachers, 3 paras, 2 unfilled, and a 0.3 speech. And what I should note is there's a 0.2 speech that is actually the same. The middle school, high school, one person does middle school and high school, and then she also does all our augmentative devices, meaning for the students that need to use a device to communicate with us, such as the iPads, or quite often they're more like Kindle devices, and we teach them to use visual communication that way. So she helps service all the technology needs for that. So that's that 0.2. Questions on that?
Holly, you have the teachers, paras, speech pathology listed here. You have paras broken down into filled and unfulfilled positions. Can you speak to the filled and unfulfilled positions a little bit?
Unfilled is kind of that national trend right now. Like everybody with their help wanted. And that's us as well. Like, we're exploring other avenues. We've partnered with TOC to recruit and enlist paras. But right now, those are currently the positions that are open that we need that are not filled. So I was gonna talk about in the next slide, in Courtney and Gayleen, we hired at the end of last year to be an assistant. And she's really kind of taken on the role as onboarding and managing the para schedules and ensuring that we have supports everywhere we need. So we're kind of piecing together things. It's short-term solutions right now. And TLC has gotten us a couple more, but yeah, we're still a ways from being fully staffed.
What would you describe as the qualifications for a job like that? I know the pay is probably the same as a normal para versus if you're in a special needs area, is it more or less, or are there
It's a little bit more.
It's a little more, yeah.
And then what are the qualifications for someone that's looking in, to go into that? It's just
Time hard, the willingness to work. I mean, it's not easy work.
no.
We work hard to split up the day so that you're not necessarily with one student all day, because even that can get a little monotonous. But no, a GED or high school diploma, we no longer require you to pass the para-pro test to work as a special ed para, especially in the DCD rooms. But we do ask that you take and pass PCA, which is the personal care attendant test, so that they can do the personal cares and provide all that. So, and we help with that, and provide assistance for that.
And those are full-time positions then, they're 5 days a week and?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, most of them are about 7 hours. In addition to those other positions, we have 2 evaluating managers. So Lene Solberg and Deb Kester, and those what I talked about before that do that, compiling all those reports and the testing, contacting parents. They do a lot of that work. We have a DAPE teacher and 2 school psychologists that are employed by ZED, but are just with Stewartville. And then what I forgot to put on there is Courtney, who's now the assistant. She does an amazing work already.
What is a DAPE teacher?
DAPE is Developmental Adaptive Physical Education. So a student that maybe due to a physical impairment or developmental delay is not able to keep up with the physical demands as a gen ed peer, they can receive this extra service to maybe help develop muscle tone or just pre-teach skills that maybe they would have in gym class so that they can access the programming the same as their peers.
And may I ask who took that over in a retirement?
Oh, Barb's actually,
retired.
yeah,
Is she
Barb
still
was an
here?
LD teacher,
Oh, she is,
but
okay.
Kim Severson is our DAPE
Okay,
teacher.
I wasn't sure who,
Yep.
if that was her role or not.
It
Okay.
was in the
Okay, I was
past, yeah.
thinking so, okay.
So other services from ZED, though, of course, the ALC, South Campus, which is our Setting 4 program in Byron. They also provide those related services, which we talked about, those low incidents. 2 behavioral analysts that are, they work with us, Hazel Ashbuck. She comes and is just with ZED, or just with Stewartville and with Hayfield, so she comes, works with us 1.5 days a week, just with us. And then we also have Amy Rice, who is doing our middle school, and then she also works with other districts, but they are amazing at what they do. They'll come in, work with us, work with the student, help problem solve ideas, come up with kind of a plan of attacks if we need that. And sometimes it's just simple things, but when you're in the mix, it's hard to see it, right? Because you're in it, you can't see the big puzzle, and they can step in and look at the big picture and kind of give us some strategies. Yeah, and then they provide department meetings, coordinator meetings, places to meet when we have big projects and stuff. They give all that support. So that was a lot of information really fast. Any questions?
Can you tell me more about, I won't say it right, but almost like the 3-tier system for the intervention if someone is, you said that there's a problem-solving group and then it goes to a
So if a teacher has a student that they feel could use some additional supports, or maybe they're just unsure of what they're doing in their classroom isn't really working, they can refer the student onto the problem-solving team. And Mr. McElroy and Mr. Johnson probably can talk about that way better than I can. But they meet with the problem-solving team, and this problem-solving team then would give them interventions to try back in their classroom. And then our school counselors and stuff can follow up with them to see if these interventions are working. And then after they've tried the interventions, after a length of time, they'll go back to the problem solving and meet again to see if the interventions were working. If they were, great, nothing else needs to go forward because it was something simple. But if after they've done these interventions and we're still not seeing change or progress, then the problem-solving team can help decide if we should then refer them to child study, which then is us with the special ed department, and we can determine if this is a student that should warrant a special ed evaluation, or if it's something that, no, go try this because it's likely that they wouldn't qualify, and we don't want to go through that stress and heartache for a family if we know that they're not gonna qualify.
And do you see that that has lowered the amount of kids that are going through the full process, or is it?
Yeah, I think so. We never kept data on that because that problem solving's been around for a long time, so there's not the data on it. But it definitely, sometimes it's simple as giving students time too. And we all have different personalities and different ways of thinking, so a student may move in from another district and they're used to reacting or behaving in a way that was warranted for the district they came from, but now here it doesn't just quite fit. The problem solving maybe can help, just kind of like the behavior analyst, look at that big picture that maybe as a classroom teacher you can't see because you're in the middle of the big picture. So yeah, I definitely think it helps.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Holly. A lot of good information.
Thank you.
May I ask, I have just one more question.
Yeah.
You, clearly, with unfilled positions and things like that, is there some, out of all of those things, what is the thing that you're most concerned about with what your job entails and what our district needs? As far as, is it the positions not being filled, is it?
The positions not being filled right now are probably the biggest because it causes an anxiety level for all the staff, right?
Everybody has to work a little harder.
Yeah, everybody's looking a little harder. Nobody gets that moment to breathe. Teachers are working through their prep, all of that. So that is a big stress on the whole of the department. And then it goes beyond just the special ed department because maybe we would have more paras available in the gen ed classes if we had there's a whole scale there.
Yes,
That is
yeah.
probably the biggest stressor at the moment.
That's what I was thinking, it would be based on, how it, I was wondering if that was the case, so, okay.
I want to commend Mrs. Clark for all the hard work that she does. She is a problem solver and is not afraid to get in there and pick up the pieces wherever they are laying and put them back together. She also is very effective at remembering what it was like to be in the classroom. I don't think, sometimes you have administrators that aren't akin or aligned with the work that's boots on the ground, and she is. She knows exactly what our teachers and our paras are experiencing and working to help them, support them, and do all the things that she can do to make sure that they're successful, which then just leads to students that are successful. So we are very fortunate to have Holly on our team.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs.
Thank
Clark. Next on the agenda is the principal's monthly reports.
We'll start with Mr. McElroy.
Good evening, everyone. I just want to cover a few highlights at Bonner Elementary. One of the things that we're very proud of is our Meet the Teacher. The program that we started here years ago where we have the families come in to meet the teacher and take care of various other tasks. I want to thank Mr. Peterson here for writing up a very nice article about Bonner and the whole Meet the Teacher process. I'm very happy to report that once again, 2 years in a row, and really close for 3 years, we were at 100% participation. which means we had every single family come into Bonner. This has grown into a very integral part of who we are culturally, and it sends a very positive message to our families and to our students of the importance of that relationship building. So 100% participation. We had a couple that were virtual, but we got a hold of everyone. So, you know, probably one of the biggest things that I've noticed, and one thing that I ask teachers at the beginning of the year is especially after I do my drop-in observations, are what's going well for you, what are your concerns? And overwhelmingly, everyone's just happy to be back at Bonner. And I mean, just the concept that we have all our kids and all our staff back at Bonner working together, instead of just being this disjointed type thing, which we made work last year to the best of our abilities. But I think there was just this overall overwhelming sense of we're back together. So that's something that we're really happy with. You know, there's been some changes here and there, academic schedules, transportation, things like that. We're very adaptable. Everything's running relatively smooth at Bonner right now. One thing on Monday, October 4th, we have the Site Lodge IQ, which is the meeting as far as the facilities. Bonner Elementary is key. It's kind of a centerpiece in there amongst, you know, the high school as well. And so I really look forward to that meeting to really kind of talk about the needs of Bonner, how we can grow, and really address some of the issues that we're dealing with. Another thing I just kind of wanted to really briefly talk about is one thing that we learned from the pandemic. You know, there was a lot of not so fun stuff, but there's some things that we learned from too. One thing that we implemented at Bonner this year is we are doing a soft start. So instead of having students come in, they go out to the back, they have their morning recess, and then we bunch them all together and send them out to their classrooms. Instead of doing that, we're having students report to their classrooms. So they get off the bus, they get dropped off, someone will go eat breakfast, and then a lot of them just go to the classroom. And the best way I can kind of make an analogy here is if you do Black Friday. And if you're waiting outside at Target and all of a sudden they open up those doors and there's a mad rush going through, okay, it's stressful. By doing the soft start, we allow the students to come in, they can take their time, there's going to be more room by their lockers, they just kind of have a softer start to the day. And of course that really affects things like office referrals. Students are more calm, they're ready, they're mentally prepared for the day. And so that's something that we're really kind of proud of because we think it's really benefiting our students. Last but not least, I just want to really kind of mention, Holly had mentioned earlier too, we've completed our assessments, our FastBridge assessments, and we're working on the Fountains of Dell, which is our new reading curriculum, reading those assessments as well. Once again, we have a very well-rounded understanding where our students are academically. And then we're going to start like the WIN program here, hopefully by the end of this week. Is kind of our goal, which means we're giving those students the opportunities to receive the supports that they need in a very timely manner. So that's what I have for the Bonner report. Any questions?
Fantastic.
I know with COVID, you probably don't have any testing or anything to see like where we are from, you know, with the changes in education last year. What do you think will be a good indicator for seeing like where the kids are at and how much growth or how much we missed, you know, and not having them in the classroom? Will you have?
Yeah, it's interesting because we do have that baseline testing now. You know, it wasn't as concerning as we thought it possibly could be.
That's what I was wondering.
It's you know, it's not as strong as we've had in other years, but at the same time, we have to have a starting point. And I'm probably more concerned about what we see as far as the growth this year compared to last year this year. So.
Anything else?
Thank
All right,
you.
Thank you, Mr. McEnroy.
Mr. Johnson from Bear Cave Intermediate.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me. I can't keep up with Bonner. We had 474 out of our 477 parents join us for the Meet the Teacher, so 99%. We almost got there. Just like he said, it is such a foundational piece to the success that we have, because you get a chance to build those relationships, not only with the parents that you're gonna be working with as teachers, but also with those students. It's that first opportunity to just, okay, you're Mr. Jacobson, you're Mrs. Nelson, so forth and so on. And it just kind of puts those kids at ease, much like that soft landing that we're talking about. Having that opportunity to meet those teachers before the school year starts, it kind of brings a little bit of relief to those kids. And so it's so awesome. We're so thankful for those 2 days that we have every single year, and it has become a part of our culture. We were able to get win and talent development started today in our third grade class. In our third grade, we have been doing those same FastBridge baseline benchmark assessments and getting an idea of where our kids are at. I think the wonderful thing about this year is, and the thing that we continue to remind our teachers and our families, is that these benchmark assessments give us an idea of where the kids are at academically, but the growth that they made last year through the resilience that they showed and all of the things that they grew in, that can't be found in these tests. And so we're taking all of that whole child view, holistic view of all of these students that we have. And, but we've gotten those tests done. We've got that Win and TD going. We're really excited to intervene. So this is part of those interventions that Mrs. Clark talked about that will be for our Tier 2 students that just need a little bit of extra reading support. If those don't work, then we give them more individualized one-on-one reading support. Those 2 interventions, if those aren't successful, that's when we can say, okay, there's something that we're not able to do here. Let's get some more service time for these kiddos. And so that's how we use that process moving forward. Really excited. We have a big week of field trips this week. So we're going, the third graders went to Wilderness Inquiry at Chester Woods Park today. They got to go canoeing and hiking and got an opportunity to talk about some conservation and some of that stuff. It was a great opportunity for them. 4th grade is going on Wednesday, 5th grade goes tomorrow, and then 5th grade goes to Big Island Rendezvous on Friday. So it's a busy week for our students. We're really excited to be able to provide those opportunities. We took a year off last year, we weren't able to do any of that stuff, and so it's exciting to see the kids, the excitement level for those kids going through the roof. So a couple of other cool things that we've been doing. I need to really give a shout out to my SEL team, Courtney Fackler, Emily Lent, and a new member, Rena Dornfeld. Rena has really taken on that Tier 1, giving the whole group counseling lessons, which has freed up Mrs. Lent and Mrs. Fackler to help out with some of the initiatives that we're trying to push forward. We're trying to build leaders in our 5th graders, and so last year at the end of 4th grade, they filled out applications to be a part of different leadership groups in our school. So some of them wanted to be tour guides. They give tours to new families, to the incoming 3rd graders that will be coming in the spring of this year. So those ones, we're just starting to train them so that when we have new families join us, those kids can give the tours with a little bit of guidance from me to make sure that that kids know that, hey, this is something that we're really proud of here at Bear Cave. Another thing that they signed up for was we started school photographers. And so we have students who come down to the office, they grab the iPad, they go out, they take the pictures of our roar winners, they go take the pictures. Teachers can submit fun things that are going on around the school. The kids have little badges that they wear so teachers don't wonder what in the world, why is this random kid coming into my room right now? They wear a little badge, take a picture, they bring it back to the office. We then email a social media consultant who comes down to the office, uses Canva to create a post, posts it on Facebook with a hashtag BCI Kids Post so that families know that it's our kids that are doing the work, not myself, Mrs. Lent, getting that message out. It's just another way to build some leadership skills, some technology skills, and build some ownership and the pride that we have at Bear Cave and our students. So those are the really cool things. The last one that they're doing is instead of me giving morning announcements, we have a BCI news team. So we have different kids that come down, read the news, talk about sports from the last week in Stewartville schools, anything big that's coming up, fire drills, evacuation drills, all that stuff, and then gives a little roar message. So we're really, really proud of all of those things that is helping to build the culture that is positivity at Bear Cave. So it's been a fun start. We're excited to be back. So
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. We have Mrs. Prunty from the middle school.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk to you again today about what's been going on in the middle school. Like the other buildings, I can't meet Mr. Johnson, which clearly means I can't meet Mr. McEnroy, but at the middle school, we had 487 conferences. We got a 95% rate of attendance to these back-to-school conferences, which was very different for us from our Meet the Teacher night, because previously we had everybody come in and you just walk around. Here we just met with only our homeroom teachers. We followed that up last week with our Meet the Teacher night. So now after a week and a half or 2.5 weeks of school, the kids got to introduce their parents to their teachers, and they had a little bit more to talk about. At that Meet the Teacher night last week, we also had 2 sessions for parents. One was how to communicate with your middle schooler. Things start changing very much for those middle schoolers then. So we gave some tips and tricks for working with your middle schooler. And then we also had a session thanks to Katie Morlock, who ran that session for Schoology Skyward, just to how to make sure everybody knows now that they have something to look at, how they should be looking at things. So that was very well attended as well. Our first weeks of school have been bustling with energy. At the beginning of the school year at a middle school, the transition for the 6th graders is always the most. I'm going to talk a lot about the 6th graders today. They've done a really nice job. They've had to manage 2 combinations and a whole different approach to learning with this 8 different teachers and all of the things and all of the movement, and they've really done a nice job. They're pretty solid with their lockers. So that's big. That's really big. Let's see, what else did I have here in my notes? Oh, this week, 6th graders are in their bike safety unit. So if you see the 6th graders on bikes, or you see lots of kids every hour of the day around town, that's because our 6th graders are doing that. That's a very well-received program. Lots of parents have been dropping off bikes, and we have our bikes, of course, that we use as well. So thank you to Mrs. Miller and Mr. Teige for their efforts in our bike lesson. We had a little bit of a hitch with the supply chain for the 6th grade. They did not get their computers before school started, and we actually gave them to them on the 17th. And so sometime around the 14th, I think we received all of those computers, and thanks to Joe and Dave and Sam in the technology department, they busted their work, I want to say their butts. So they busted their butts a little bit to make sure that by Friday, all the kids had those machines in their hands. It was actually a very quick turnaround, but it was also really helpful for the transition, maybe to not have the device and the lockers and the 8 classes. So maybe that's something we're going to think about even for next year. Like, let's not give them all of the things right away. And that has made the transition much smoother for the 6th grade. So that's been pretty exciting. Let's see. I think that's what I have from the middle school.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And now we have Mr. Green from the high school.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to come speak about the high school. I'm going to say that the high school did surpass the other 3 because they all expected their percentages to be right about where they were. I expected the high school to maybe be in the 50% range. We had 82% of our families show up for Meet the Teacher. And so we were very pleased with that. And I think we actually had a greater number as well that came to our pathways. Some came in and weren't necessarily taking up the opportunity to go to their teacher, but they did want to go get their picture taken, and they did want to go take care of the other items that we have, like paying fees so they can get their open campus card and things like that. So that kind of stuff did happen. So I'm going to estimate that we probably had somewhere in the neighborhood of 550 of our 630 students and families that were in our building during our 2 Meet the Teacher days. So I was very pleased with that number. It surpassed what I imagined we might have. The start to the school year at the high school has it's been very much what we hoped for in some respects and very much not in another. And so we just dealt with our first COVID case this past Friday in the high school. So we had gone quite a while here without any positive cases, and we were very pleased with that. We know that our students in the high school are very active outside of school as well, and involved in activities. We knew it was a matter of time. We didn't know how soon it would be, but we just had our first case this past Friday. And the students have been largely compliant with the mask wearing. It's been exceeded what I had hoped for, given that they had the chance in the summer to be without a mask, and I thought it would be very difficult coming back in. Our students have done a really nice job overall with that. The disappointing aspect that you may have seen in the post bulletin is that Stewartville did fall victim to this nonsense with this devious licks and TikTok, and we had our share of vandalism that occurred in our bathrooms. I really want to commend our teaching staff and our students. Our students got sick of this. They wanted to stand up to it. So we had students that were very much eager to report to us when things were going on, or even confronting students that were perhaps about to do something that would not have been a good idea. But then, of course, to the custodial staff, Bob and Lisa and Josh in the high school and in the middle school have just been so responsive to these issues when they come up. I know it's frustrating for them, but they do such a good job of going in and making these facilities usable again soon after there's been an issue. We are finding at the high school that students are displaying varying levels of preparedness to return to full in-person schooling. Most, I think, have acclimated pretty well, but we do have a number that are struggling. And so with that in mind, it's unclear to what extent this might be due to the pandemic or adjusting from the various learning models that we had last year. But this past month, every Thursday we have a program during homeroom that we want all of our 9 through 12 students participating in. We've continued our social emotional learning lessons this year. The emphasis this year is on coping skills and self-regulation with all of the ones throughout the school year. So the students already experienced September's lesson. Just this past Thursday, the students completed a well-being and academic check-in. And so the check-in form asked them to respond to 4 different well-being questions, to identify up to 3 staff members that they feel connected to, confirm their current grades in all of their classes so that they are aware, so they have to actually stop and process that and think about it. And we asked them to create an academic SMART goal for the next month. So we're asking them to think about that and identify one thing that they're going to start doing or continue doing in order to address that SMART goal. The well-being check revealed that our students as a whole are doing quite well. The most common result on this question, which asked them to rate 1 out of 5, was a 4 out of 5 on these 4 questions. And I have a copy of the form if any of you are interested in seeing it. I'd be happy to give you a copy of it. I meet every Wednesday with our counselors and our social worker, and so we plan to review the results of the form that were taken this past Thursday and figure out where we may have some needs that we want to make sure to go and address. And lastly, tomorrow night is the first night of parent-teacher conferences at the high school, so 4:30 to 7:30 we have virtual conferences being held, and so we have families signing up through PTC Fast to take part in the conferences with any of their teachers that they would like to see that their students have over the course of the day. So that's it from the high school. Thank you very much. Any questions?
I have a question, I don't know if it's really necessary to you. So, I'm just curious, I have not been to an indoor sporting event. Is it based on Minnesota State High School age that they follow for the masking or not masking?
Local decision.
It's a local decision, okay, and our local decision ties with what the school is doing, or it is? Okay.
No, for activities,
Yes.
for attendees, or guests that come to the activities are not required to mask.
Okay,
Strongly
that's what I was
recommended.
wondering, because I was hearing that, the kids
Yeah.
weren't wearing them sometimes, and so I just wanted to
Not-
make sure I understood.
Attendees at activities are not.
Okay, that's what I wanted,
Choice.
Yep.
Athletes on the sidelines are,
yes.
and then we have a 3-foot safety zone behind the athletes that no one can sit.
Okay,
And then coaches are.
okay.
So
that's
the
what I was-
participants on the floor in the game are not.
Right, okay, I just wanted to make sure I understood, someone had said that a lot of kids aren't wearing them, and so I just wanted to see, are they following the rules, or are they not following the rules?
They're following the rules.
They're following the rules, great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And I just want to add, for all of the buildings, I just want to thank you for all of the additional support that you have gone above and beyond for not only the academics, but seeking out the kids that are struggling socially and emotionally. Personally, we have had things happening, just like any other family. And in every building that we've had, which I've got 5 kids, so I've got them all covered. But the programs that we have, and we have added more staff for counselors and social workers to really support those kids. Thank you for being there for the kids.
And I think the consistent thing I was hearing from all of you was some creative ways to address a need that you're seeing. And I think that's great. I love that creativity and not just always doing what we've been doing. You know, you gotta find new ways to reach the kids and make an impact and make a difference with them. And some of the stuff that you guys are sharing, I love hearing that because it's like, wow, you know, the camera thing or the social media thing that the kids are doing at BCI, it's just so creative, and I love, I want to keep hearing those things. That's great.
Yeah.
I will give kudos to our admin team. We have an amazing group of leaders in this school district, and that's followed closely, very closely by the amazing teaching staff and support staff that we have. Stewartville is very blessed and fortunate to have the wonderful people working on our team.
Don't make me cry. Just make sure they take time for themselves too in all of this, because I think with all of these challenges, there gets to be a lot where you always feel like you need to do more and more and more, and you do need to take a break and take rest so that you can be
The
your
admin
best.
team can share, there are rules for disengagement that they follow.
So happy, because that is
There
very
are.
important with all of our challenges, so.
That's fun.
It's a trickle effect.
Thank you.
All right.
All right.
Next, we have under A2, a COVID data tracker, and I'm gonna share some data with you from September 7th through September 23rd. So we're going from the first day of school until September 23rd, and we are using Thursdays as our cutoff point so that I can compare the data on Fridays, and then the thought is that it would be published on Fridays. We're starting with the first day of school, so this does not include any data prior to the first day of school. So there were possibly some cases that we were made aware of before school started, but that's not going to be included in our data. We're starting with the first day of school. So during that first week, we had 0 new cases and 0 active cases, and then we have an active positive case rate. So just explain what those columns are. New cases would be any cases occurring during that week time frame. Active cases would be anybody who is considered a new case for that week, plus any cases from the previous week that are still in isolation. The active positive case rate is the number of cases divided by our total enrollment. I am purposely not identifying where the cases are by building or grade level. I just don't want to get into, oh, the 5th grade has had an explosion of cases, or that building has gotten many cases, or that kind of thing. The data that will be public on the website will be generic to the district. Just because people from outside of our school district can access that data, I didn't want to have it be identifiable by grade level, classroom, or school.
Is this just students? It's not staff?
Students and staff.
Students and staff,
And
This
when-
is
okay.
positive cases,
When you
students
say
and staff.
active cases, those are people that are actually have, not exposed, but actually have
COVID.
COVID.
They are
Okay.
COVID positive.
Not the peripheral
No.
from a COVID exposure. Okay, got it.
So then during the second week from 9/10 to 9/16, we had 2 new cases, and those 2 cases were active during that time. So that's 0.001% of our population. Last week then, we have 6 new cases. The 2 from the previous week are still active because they're still in isolation. So now we have a total of 8. And that is 0.004% of our population. School district community rates of transmission. This is something that is shared consistently with Olmsted County Public Health and Minnesota Department of Health. They refer to this data because community rates of transmission do impact the school. If it's being transmitted in the community, we can expect that there will be transmission in the school setting. So the first week, and that should be 9/7 to 9/9, sorry about that. The 7-day rate was 259, so that is now the national standard that is being used. You remember last year, we had the case rate by 10,000, that was a Minnesota specific number. But there is an organization that is translating that so that you can familiarize yourself with that data and what that means on the old system. So 259 cases per 100,000 for a 7-day rate is high, according to the CDC level. That 14-day rate that we used last year, it was 51.8. That was the highest benchmark. So if you want to compare, which we shouldn't because they're two different variants, but that 50, when we got to 50 last year, that's when the state said, you better be thinking about distance learning. Okay, so that's where our rates are in our community. And those are the rates that they used last year, were community rates, okay? From 910 to 916, it went up to 267.9, and you can see that it's still high, and the 14-day rate at that point was 53.6. From 917 to 923, now we're at 327.8. It is still in the high level, and our 14-day rate is 59.6. The zip codes that are included in this data are the district, or the zip codes that we draw students from that are part of our district. So we're not using zip codes of open enrolled students. We're using zip codes that are in our school district. So that includes 902 and 904 in Rochester. We have a portion of 936 for Grand Meadow, all of Racine in 967. We have a portion of Spring Valley that is part of our school district, and then we, of course, we have Stewartville, which is the largest portion.
Those community rates though are everybody in those in those cities, not weighted according to the district.
It is weighted according to our population from those zip codes.
So you are saying Stewartville will have a higher weighted
Yes.
average than the
So
other
this
ones.
number here is 70% of that number is
That-
Stewartville,
okay, yep, I
because
understand.
70% of our enrollment is from
Comes from
Stewartville.
Stewartville.
Yep.
Okay, yep.
The transmission rates, just for the CDC guidelines, if you're from 0 to 9.99, you're in the low transmission rate, and then you can see it goes to moderate, substantial, and high as anything over 100. And the reason that that occurs is the R0, which is the transmission rate for this variant. I'll go back to last year, the R0 was 3. So one person would potentially infect 3 people. Then those 3 people would each infect 3 more. Now you have 9. So in the third iteration, you'd have 27 people being infected from a source of 1. The variant that we have now has a higher viral load and an easier transmission rate. So the R0 is 7. So one person now infects 7. On the second reiteration, it becomes 49. And the third is 343. Last year, one person on the Alpha variant was 49. This year, the Delta variant is 343. Higher viral load. So the possibility of that infection being transmitted occurs more frequently, which is why they're using this number as a high transmission rate when you're over 100. They also have guidance if you're at high substantial transmission, everyone should wear a mask, including indoor settings. If you're moderate or low, unvaccinated people should wear a mask, including in indoor settings. The last metric that I have here is the percent of our youth that are fully vaccinated. The majority of our students come from Olmsted County and Mower County, and then there's about 3.5% that come from other communities, but I'm not tracking that because it's such a small number. But every week I go out and I grab the percent of the youth that are vaccinated that are 12 to 15 years old in Olmsted County, and then 16 to 17 years old in Olmsted County. And you can see the first week we're at 62 and 72, it's climbing, just inching. We're at 66 and 74. Mower County is below the state average for 12 to 15 year olds and 16 to 17 year olds. They started out at 35 and 41, and we are inching up to 47, 44 and 47. So we have 2,100 students. I'm gonna just round this up to 10. That'd be 210 students from Mower County on average, right? Really rough numbers. And of those 210, less than 50% are fully vaccinated in both age groups. So it's something to consider when we start to make our decisions.
What was the state averages? You mentioned state averages.
I don't have that on this sheet, but Olmsted is above state averages here,
Sure.
and Mauer County is below.
Do they say anything, this might be too much biology, but do they say anything about a person that's vaccinated, about their spread is different than a person that isn't vaccinated? I don't know the answer to that. It doesn't,
No,
no, okay.
your vaccination is not going to stop you from getting the virus.
It will just minimize
It will
your
minimize your
symptoms,
symptoms.
usually,
Yep.
yes.
Yep.
Okay.
So that is the data that I would put on some sort of a dashboard.
Sure.
I looked at several dashboards and their examples. Some just report their positive cases, that's all they do. I think this is good information for us to have because it does tell us what's going on in our communities. And then this is a key piece for me. When we're making decisions about the school setting, I would like to know how many of the children have been vaccinated, got through the full series. It just, I think, would be a helpful piece of information to make sure that we're cognizant of. For our 12 to 15-year-olds, 2 out of 3 are vaccinated from Olmsted County. So that may or may not inform our decision-making, okay? Any questions on this data? Okay,
Do you find that a lot of people are going to the website? Is there any way you can track, like?
we
people
don't
going-
track that data.
Yeah, I just wondered
So
how
it
much,
would be
how much
available.
people are looking at this, no?
I don't know.
Okay, I didn't-
And this is not on a dashboard yet. So what I'm looking for is a way for me to enter the information into the table or spreadsheet and it uploads itself instead of me going to the website every time and getting it all regraphed and recalibrated.
That's what I'm saying, how much time are you taking on this if you decide to do this in a way that's meaningful?
Okay.
Well, is it, that's what I mean, is it, how much time is it taking, do you think?
It has to be we have to calculate it.
Yeah.
The principals have to report the data, so it's their time.
Okay.
It's my time to compile and calibrate it, so there's time and effort.
And you're doing this in a way so that you think that we'll be able to make a better decision about staying open, not staying open, mask, no mask?
For sure, the new cases, active cases, and case rate is gonna be part of that
Sure,
decision
your
making process. So
decision-making.
this first section we have to do.
Okay.
This is just going out and grabbing it and entering it myself. And this last part, vaccination, is just going out and grabbing the data on Thursdays and getting it in. The calculation compilation is this part right here.
Right.
Because we're the ones that have to do this. So right now, you can see it's manageable. 8 cases in the entire district that are active right now. This is manageable data.
But this is similar to last year, when we start getting cases and we start
Correct.
tracking people and people coming back and going out, coming
Yep.
back and da-da-da-da-da, with no COVID advisor anymore,
No.
right? That it could end up becoming quite a job again.
It could be. We will have to, that's part of that monitor and adjust.
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Okay.
So that's that piece, and that's just kind of laying the foundation for the next thing that I want to share with you, which is the COVID mitigation and response plan. So I have a draft that I want to share with you tonight. This mitigation and response plan would be what we would look at on October 11th for board approval. And I'm just going to go through it with you. I have some notes at the top here. This is final draft, so this has been vetted by our admin team, our school nurse. I've shared it with public health. The information on this would be integrated into our healthy and safe learning plan and procedures. So we would find a way to put this within the plan. It'd become its own section, but it wouldn't be 2 things that you'd have to look at. All the information would be in one place. The final plan would be reviewed and discussed at our meeting tonight. It would be approved by the board on October 11th. You'd have 2 weeks to think about, maybe this should be done differently, or you have other input that you want to provide. We would look at full implementation on Monday the 18th so that we would have some time to inform our families of what the plan will be, okay? So as far as the introduction, it's intended to have in place all the procedures that we need to make decisions in the interest of the health and safety of our students and staff. Focused and intentional monitoring and assessment of the effectiveness of this plan would be done on a regular basis, and we may need to revise it as the school year progresses. So this is what we think will work, but once we get into the mix of how things are working, we may need to come back to you and say we need to make a change. So the metrics that would be used. The first metric would be our active case rates. So each week we compile the data regarding new COVID cases that have been reported. The active cases would include the new cases that are from the current week and any cases from the previous week who are still in isolation. So it's anybody that's COVID positive would be the active case rate. That rate is determined by calculating the percentage of active cases compared to the total enrollment of the grade level, school, and or district. Total enrollment would be recalibrated every month, because I give you an enrollment update already, so we can easily do that. Active case rates and correlating numbers of students for specific grade levels will be determined by the building principals and district leaders. And the number of new cases, active cases, and the active case rate for the district as a whole will be published weekly on our COVID data dashboard. So the active case rate data for a classroom or a grade level or a building would be internal data. The district-wide data would be what is published on the data dashboard. Okay? I've got the community transmission rate and the zip codes that are used in that. That's from the previous sheet, but it would be part of this plan so that people would know what we're using. And then we also have the vaccine rates for eligible student groups. That also would be included on the website.
I wonder for that one if you shouldn't do something, I don't know how to say it, but basically like something about the weighting, about where the majority, I don't know, does that seem?
I could for this piece, you mean?
Yes, I wonder if that, because you're not using all of the
No.
towns, you're only using part of the towns based on population, you know what I mean? I just don't know how to say it.
Yeah.
It seems like it should be, because really then your number could end up being bigger or smaller based on those sizes. Your percentage is off then a little
Right.
bit.
Yep.
So just to think about that.
So the site that does this allows you to weight the zip code. So when
More
you
work for
originally
you,
go
of
to
course,
it.
but
Yeah. Yep, so it is balanced, but it's not exact.
okay, so it is balanced, there is some level of balance.
Right, but it's not exact, so.
So I would say your number would change based on having the full population or.
Okay, so the stages would be, at each stage, the intent is to establish a healthy and safe learning environment for all of our students and staff. For all stages, if there's a positive case, the families are required to report them to the health office immediately after results are known. Isolation is required for a minimum of 10 days from the date of the positive test or the onset of symptoms, and everything is true. You feel better, your cough, shortness of breath, and other symptoms have improved, and there's no fever for at least 24 hours without medication. If it's symptomatic or a suspected case, for symptomatic students in schools, parents will be contacted to pick the student up as soon as possible. While waiting for the parent to arrive, they must continue to wear a face covering. Before returning to school, the individual must have had improvement of symptoms, be fever-free for at least 24 hours without medication, and they are recommended to be tested for COVID. Procedures for a close contact to a positive case. We will notify you of a positive case regarding your potential exposure. General notifications of the potential exposure to a positive case will be made to the parents in a classroom at grade level, a bus, an activity, and/or athletic team. So it's a very general notification. The date of the exposure, your child may have been exposed, watch for symptoms. Individuals vaccinated are not required to quarantine and should submit vaccination documentation to the health office if they have not already done so. We are strongly recommending the suggested quarantine, and the quarantines are the same as last year. 7 days, get tested on day 5 or after, return to school on day 8 if you have a negative result. This is a strong recommendation. At this point, it's not required. All close contacts may choose to complete the 14-day quarantine if they would like to. Any household member that's not vaccinated with the vaccine who lives in the same household as the person who's tested positive is strongly recommended to quarantine. So that's that sibling close contact. An individual who's experiencing symptoms after a close contact is strongly recommended to be tested. And they must have improvement of their symptoms, be fever-free for 24 hours before they can come back to school. So that's at every stage. That information doesn't change no matter what stage we're in. Okay, so stage 1. The metrics we would use at stage 1 is our active case rate is from 0 to 2.75%. 2.75% of the enrollment at each building is designated as the following. And you can see the schools listed and the number of students there. The active case rate for stage 1 may be applied to a grade level, individual school, or it's district-wide. To be in stage 1, one of the metrics is that the CDC transmission rate is low or moderate. What does that mean? Okay, for stage 1, you're gonna wear masks while we're transported in school buses and school vehicles. This is a federal requirement, it has not been lifted. So if you wanna get a plane, train, or a federal vehicle of any type, a city bus, school bus, you have to wear a mask. Face coverings would be strongly recommended for all students and staff, regardless of their vaccination status, while they're in school. In order for that to be possible, what we're saying is we have to have less than 2.75% of our students designated as being COVID positive, and our community transition rate should be low or moderate. So we're saying a low case rate in our buildings and low or moderate transmission in our communities in order for us to say masks are recommended. Close contacts to a positive case, regardless of their location, will be required to wear a face mask at all times during the school day hours for a minimum of 2 weeks from the date of exposure. So if you get a message from the school that your child is now in close contact to a classroom, a member of an athletic team, a grade level, whatever that is, everybody who's in that group wears a face mask for 2 weeks. If you can't wear a face mask for 2 weeks, you can quarantine at home for 14 days. In an elementary classroom, they'll be required to wear a face covering at all times during the school day for a minimum of 2 weeks if there are 2 or more cases in that classroom. And why did we use 2? Because once you get to 3, that's the ILI benchmark for closing that room.
Based on your percentages.
Okay? So that's stage 1. If we want to make face masks optional, all of this, in our opinion, along with the consultation of public health, needs to be in place.
Belinda, can you tell us what ILI stands for?
Influenza-like illness, it's the benchmark that is used for determining whether or not you can maintain an open classroom, grade level, or school for influenza, norovirus. They've now put COVID into that grouping. If you remember, it was probably 3 years ago, we closed Bonner for an ILI level of 5% for the norovirus. And basically, once it gets to that level, if you don't do something, everyone will get it. So that transmission rate, once it gets to 5%, it is considered uncontrolled. So we don't, the ILI is not just 5% of enrollment, it also means 3 in an elementary classroom. That magic number of 3, if we had 3 kids with norovirus in one classroom, we would close that classroom because you're on the verge of uncontrolled spread.
Just the classroom, not the whole school.
Just the classroom. So it's 3, the ILI is 5% of the total school grade level, or 3 in a classroom. Here we're saying if there are 2 students that are active within a classroom, that classroom wears face masks for 2 weeks. We don't want that to spread. Any questions on stage 1?
So we're trying to prevent, to get before, we're putting a step in
So that we don't get to stage 2.
so we don't get.
Well, this is once you're in stage 1.
Correct.
Right, we are always in stage 1. I mean, that's the baseline, because it's from 0 to 2.75.
Right.
But the only way that we could say masks are optional or family decisions is we have to be below this 2.75% for the buildings, which are these numbers here, and we need that community transmission to be low or moderate. We need our community's help to make this happen. Okay? Okay, what happens if we exceed stage 1, we go to stage 2. Now the active case rate is anywhere from 3.00 to 4.75%. So I've got the bottom here, this is 3%, it's gonna be one more student than what you see here at stage 1, okay? And then the top. So the bottom percents and the top percents, the floor and the ceiling for stage 2 are listed there. Active case rates for stage 2 may be applied to a grade level, individual school, or district-wide. Active case rates and corresponding numbers of students for specific grade levels will be determined by the building principals and district leaders. In this one, our transmission rate is significant or high. Return to stage 1. Let's say we move to stage 2, we're working to get back to stage 1. In order to go back to stage 1, we need our case rates to be this number right here. 7 active cases at Bonner, we could go back to stage 1. 7 at Bear Cave, 8 at the middle school, 9 at the high school. If we can get to those numbers, we'll go back to stage 1. When you compare them to the ceiling for stage 1, these are the ceilings for stage 1. 12, 13, 14, 18. We need to get to these numbers to go back to stage 1. We don't want to go back to the top of stage 1. We want to be below the ceiling of stage 1 to go back and say now masks are optional.
Because you don't wanna be going back and forth, we're
We're
wearing
gonna
masks
try not to
today,
go
we're
back
not
and
wearing
forth.
masks, we're wearing
Yep.
masks, okay.
So we also need this to happen. Our community rate needs to be low or moderate.
Take it back to state.
It's critical for stage 1. If we're in stage 2, face covering requirements may be implemented at 1 or more buildings and/or district-wide. So if we're in stage 2 for the entire district, the whole district is wearing masks. You may be at stage 1 in one building and stage 2 in a different one. Stage 1, masks are parent choice. Stage 2 building, masks are required. It could happen. Kids from the same family, one may have the option of not wearing one, the other one will be required. In order to have this work, families would have to make that happen. Face coverings would be required for all staff and students transported in schools and buses, we know that. Required for all staff and students, regardless of vaccination while during the school hours. If you're in stage 2, you're wearing a mask. Okay? Face coverings may temporarily be removed. This is what we currently have in our plan. So you're in organized sports, you're exercising indoors, you're practicing performing with a musical instrument, you're eating or drinking, or you're alone. Any questions on stage 2?
Ms. Selfers, you talked about having different buildings at different stages. Can you go over that
So,
again? Because I
yep.
kind of lost you there.
So Bonner might have 13 kids that are active case rate, they're gonna be in stage 2. But Bear Cave may have 13, they're gonna be in stage 1. So each building would individually move in between and out stages.
Because the populations for each building are different.
Yep, each building has different
So the
enrollment
percentages
numbers.
are different.
Different vaccinations.
So how do we determine the low, moderate, substantial, high? between
This is the
stages?
CDC rate that comes from up here.
Yep, but if they're in 2 different
That's
levels.
community, the community is where it's at. So part of that would be, can we have order?
Order. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
So if we have 2 different stages in the district, I guess my question is, if we're relying on the community for their participation and their transmission rate, but for stage 1 and stage 2, they're 2 different.
So I think what would happen is, and as we talked
Does that
about
make
this,
sense?
we've had a lot of discussions about how this would be operational.
Yeah.
Let's say our community transmission is low or moderate. Okay, we could be in stage 1. However, you've got a building now that has 23 kids.
Yeah.
they're gonna have to go to stage 2, even if the community transmission is low or moderate.
Because it has to be both, it has to be mutually exclusive for those two things in
Right.
order
Yeah.
to
Got
make
it.
the decision not to wear a mask or to wear a mask.
Okay.
You have a lot more options when the community's at low and moderate.
Yes, you do, for sure. I think if you get to the place where you have 23 kids in one school who are COVID positive, that means we have to be doing some mitigation to
Yeah.
prevent that spread to become uncontrolled. And they'd be in stage 2, so they would be wearing masks. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah.
How will
And
you,
none of these decisions are made independently by one individual.
Right.
This is a team revisiting this every week.
And not to mention, there's numbers. I mean,
Right.
these are the metrics, that's why you have these metrics
Yep.
is, because it's about the numbers.
Right, and what we're trying to do is create situations in which we can make decisions based on what we know, not what we think or feel.
Right.
If we make decisions based on what we think or feel, those are usually decisions that can be questioned.
When you really have
And-
a lot of opinions.
Right. If we can base decisions based on what we know, I think that we're gonna be doing a better process of decision making.
For sure. Just lay it out.
okay, so this is all based on COVID. We may have influenza starting up here.
Yes.
So all separate, that will not be related to this.
If there's an outbreak of influenza, public health does step in,
Okay,
and they will say, you have 5% of your students have been diagnosed with influenza
okay,
or
so
out.
that will still be a public health
Yes, it
decision.
is.
This is local control based
Yes.
on COVID only.
Yes.
So we could have a higher group of kids out based on these two things,
Correct.
but we're just basing it solely on COVID for what our numbers look like right
COVID is a
now.
local decision.
That's what I wanted to know.
Okay. Face coverings at this level I already talked about. Are we ready to go to stage 3?
Yes.
Yeah.
I
Okay,
am.
stage 3, here are metrics. Now we are approaching or exceeding 5%. These are the numbers now. I include central here because in stage 3, we're talking about closing the site or a classroom. Central doesn't have masks. They're all preschool students. So they're not really, I mean, we're tracking them here, but it does not, the face mask at stage 1 and stage 2 doesn't apply.
Yeah.
So central is not included until we get to stage 3, because now we have uncontrolled spread at 5%. Does that make sense? Okay. These are the number of students at 5%, and you can see they're just above the number of students at the top of stage 2. So the ceiling for stage 2 is 21. The floor for stage 3 is 22 at Bonner. Does that make sense? Okay. Active case rate could be applied again to a grade level, individual school, or the district-wide. Here, our community spread is gonna be likely high if we've got this much spread within our school. Return to stage 2, these numbers are below the ceiling for stage 2, just like they were before, okay? The transmission rate, again, is substantial or high to get back to stage 2. At stage 3, we are looking at closure of a classroom, a school, or a district. Stage 1 and 2 are to prevent stage 3 from happening. So everything that's in stage 1 or 2 is to prevent stage 3 from being in play. In the event that we have an outbreak of 5% or more of enrollment of a grade level, a school building, or the district, the closure of the school of the respective level will occur for a period of time determined by the district, and that is in consultation with public health. So we don't make these decisions independently of any other agency.
And 5% is in our current plan.
Yes, yep. If it's an elementary classroom or a preschool classroom, it's 3 kids. Okay, so now they use a number, no matter how large that elementary classroom is, it's 3,
You're counting elementary at 5th grade and below.
5th grade below. In the event that an outbreak of staff in a specific building or across the district results in absences that exceed the availability of substitutes, the district will close 1 or more buildings as is necessary. If our staff are out because of COVID, not for quarantines, majority of staff are vaccinated, we don't quarantine vaccinated individuals, but if they are out with COVID and they are positive and we can't get subs, we may have to close.
Which is probably tricky to get subs anyway right now, or is it getting
Substitutes
better?
are scant.
This one.
District determined the date to return to in-person learning when the infection rates are below the benchmark of the infection rate of 5%, and or in consultation with Olmsted, but that's assumed with all of this, that we're in consultation with Olmsted County Public Health. During the closure of a school, all activities are canceled or postponed, and facility rentals are restricted. So if we close the high school, we're not having activities for that amount of time that the school's closed,
If you close Bonner, no music concerts.
right?
But if you keep the high school the same, we're
Yep.
gonna run the volleyballs and the basketballs and all that stuff, okay?
Depending upon where we are.
Okay.
If our 5% is district-wide,
Shut it down,
we're closing the school district
the activities for the school,
and buildings.
with the idea that we're still teaching the kids, or how?
I'll talk about learning models next. Okay. Learning models. For closures that are 1 to 5 days in length, we'll use our flexible learning day plan, which is the flexible learning day plan that we put into place once we evolved our storm days into days now where we have school. There would not be the 2 storm day forgiveness thing. The first day that we're closed on the flexible learning, if 1 to 5 days, we start with the flexible learning days. These are low tech, no tech for elementary, Schoology based for the secondary. Teachers are available from 10 to 3, so it's that whole soft schedule for flexible learning. In excess of 5 days, we'll use 2 days to pivot to a digital learning model, and then the remainder of the closure, they will be on day 3 of that closure, we are doing digital instruction, whatever that looks like for that classroom, that grade level, or that building. Parents would be informed in a letter with what is happening next, how they make sure they access the digital learning, all the pieces. We're not gonna get into the specifics on here, because the specifics would be shared by the building principal in the event that this takes place.
Can you roll up for just a second? You said, I just wanna see, when you go up and you say we're closing, you said grade level, school building or district, it will not be a grade, like 1 classroom, it will be a
It can
whole
happen if
level?
it's
Or
3
it could happen-
students in an elementary or preschool classroom, we would close that classroom.
Right, but, okay, so you're just closing that classroom though, not,
If
I see
there's
up
3
on top,
students.
you say among students and staff are rated 5% or more enrollment of a grade level, school
Yep.
building or district, that could be a classroom that up there as much, or not?
No,
No, it's
if
just
it's
the
an
grade.
elementary classroom, it's 3.
Okay,
If it's 5% of a grade level, you could have 5% for the elementary grade level. So you have
Yeah,
100
okay.
kids in the grade, 5%. Or the school building, 5%, or the district,
okay,
5%.
thank you for the clarification, yeah.
Okay,
How do the, I would say with the staff, with the lack of subs, I know some teachers are putting in extra time to go to other rooms.
that's all being addressed through the contract.
Okay, that's being addressed in the contract, okay?
Yep.
Are there any other questions for Mrs. Selfers?
Is this a model stages, are these stages, you modeled it from some language that is out there? Or did
We
you,
spend a lot of
did
time,
you make this up?
this
Because
is
it's-
unique to Stewartville.
It's impressive.
We've heard that from public health.
And it's very clear.
But that is
So-
the nature of Stewartville. This admin team, we go for the gold standard. And we combed through several other plans and tried to make ours as comprehensive as we could.
And so you'll be reporting these numbers every week.
So on the data dashboard, in general terms, it'll be reported for the district. The grade level,
Yeah.
classroom, and building data is internal only.
Yeah.
We're not publicizing that.
But you'll be making decisions based on the internal data in
Yes.
order to move forward and make decisions on how
Yes.
we are moving around
Correct.
here with mass, no mass,
Correct.
closing, no closing, all of
Correct.
that stuff, okay.
So if there was a situation in which we need to move, I'm just gonna use Bonner, we have to move Bonner from stage 1 to stage 2, we would say we have exceeded our benchmark for stage 1, and we are at stage 2, people would be able to see the plan, because it will be public, They will know we have at least 13 students at Bonner who are now positive. We're moving to stage 2.
And we would do that every week, we would assess this
Every
every
week
week on
it will
Thursday.
be assessed. And that is that active case rate number, which is that first group. So that data has to be updated every week. I'm not updating the enrollment every week. The enrollment will be based on 2167 pre-K-12, and that would be updated monthly.
And then your communication out to the people, we don't wanna speak about that right now, or
As far as
closing mass, no mass, all of that,
that will be, we will craft messaging for each building that's appropriate for that audience. Most of the messaging we're using right now, we have notification of close contact, or a positive case to staff, to the families, and whether or not a classroom is closed is a template that the principals use. They insert the information that they want to make sure they know their building's best. They insert the information for their families, and then we get the ball rolling.
Question, if, I know it, because it's very number based, if, October 18th is a long ways away, what stage would you feel like today's numbers, where would we be today? With these metrics in place?
Today we'd be in 2 because of the community spread.
Sure, okay.
We do not have this number of students
Right,
that are COVID positive.
that's not the only
You know,
metric though.
That's not the only metric. The level of community transmission right now for 55976 is higher percentage-wise than 55904, 902,
Yeah, I understood,
so.
okay.
So we have until October 11th for you to review. You are certainly welcome to send me your questions, concerns, misgivings, whatever it is that you are thinking about. I'll communicate with Chair Wortman on whether or not that is something that should be merited to be altered in the plan. But we would be bringing the final copy to you on October 11th for consideration and approval.
Are you getting any, leadership probably has this now, and they have a pretty good idea about how this is all gonna run? Teachers or anyone that?
I don't know,
has-
leadership lead.
Well,
Principal PLC on Wednesday, we'll have a.
Yeah.
but do you feel like with the teachers and things that this is gonna be like, I mean, like
So
I
teachers
get
will-
it, explaining it, when you get your first phone call, you're gonna be like, oh.
So the teaching staff won't necessarily be working on the internal
Yeah.
data. They will be on the information
Yes.
loop
Yeah,
of
whatever
where we are and what's
communication
going
is.
on.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Yep.
I'll do, Mr. Ravenhorst, Mr. Emmanuel, any questions?
Very thorough,
Oh, I'm
very
yeah.
detailed plan.
So who reaches out right now to the parents when their child is either, they're COVID positive, it would be the parents telling us, but when the exposure happens, it's the principals that's
Yep.
reaching out right now, and they're doing it by phone call or email?
Email,
They're
letters.
doing it by an email, okay?
It's a very general letter. Your child may have been exposed to a positive case that occurred in our building. Yep.
And so you'll just come up with some other communication
Yep.
that's based on this criteria, that will share the information probably by email.
We'll have a stage 2 letter, we'll have a stage 3 letter. It'll be a template, and as I said, the building principals then tailor that template to their audience.
And then the cleaning and all of that stuff, that's just a whole
We are
different-
still,
You're still
MERV 13 indoor air quality
Yeah, that's what I was
filters.
thinking.
We are doing the daily cleaning, sanitizing. Arnold's is still on contract to do that with us. So all of those things are still in place as mitigation efforts. And we've learned a ton, right? It doesn't live on surfaces very long. So, the indoor air quality, the filtering of the air is effective, so we're continuing with that.
And I'm sure the kids are better than they would have been even 3 years ago about handling
Hand
washing
washing,
their hands and taking better.
sanitizer in every building, so
Exactly.
every classroom has sanitizer. That's not something we did before.
Right, okay.
We've upgraded the soap dispensers that we have with a higher quality of soap. So, I mean, there's tons of things that we've done
Doing your best. to
that
be
are
as
better.
preventative as possible.
Yep.
Mr. Emmanuel, you had a comment?
I just said it, look, it's very thorough and detailed plan, and I appreciate the work that's been put into this by everyone involved.
Thank you.
And, my son received a letter this week, the letter you're talking about, spells it out almost like this, so,
What to do?
he didn't do anything, he was just wear a mask.
Yep.
He was just in close contact.
And I appreciate that you keep it as objective as you can, given all of the different changes, because I do agree with you that when you get into the emotion piece of it, I think it gets, we wanna be able to, justify the decisions that we're making. So I feel like just thinking it through like this is very helpful, so.
Very good. Mr. Ravenhorst?
Well, yeah, no, I think this is fantastic. It's, like I said, very well thought out. I don't know, I think when we made the vote, and Mike personally, when I voted for it, my main concern was the, 5 to 11-year-olds that couldn't get a vaccine. So, like, I think this would be great until we can, whenever that arrives, we don't know exactly. I hear it's not that terribly far away from what they're claiming. So, like, I wonder, like, something to think about, like, when that date arrives, like, what would we do? Would that change our thinking? Would we say at that point, all the families truly do have, like, the choice to get the vaccine or not? So then, then you don't have that section of the students that literally can't, be protected. So I don't know, I think that might be something we can think about,
It's a good point
Once,
to
once,
consider.
once that goalpost is there, then
Once it's a reality.
Yep.
It's-
yeah, so, I don't know how it would manifest, but it'd be like, hey, if we reach that point, then, maybe we don't have to do any of it, I don't know, because then everybody really can have the choice whether they can be protected or want to do it or not.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. So back to the agenda. Next on the agenda is board committee updates. So facilities.
Facilities, so, I will talk a little bit more about facilities in my superintendent update, so if we could save that till then.
Meet and confer.
I'm in the process of looking for some dates, but meet and confer, the board members who are on that and want to participate in the calendar development for 21-22. We should look to be starting our first meeting in October and hopefully have that process done before January.
Who's on meet and confer?
I will email those specific individuals. I have that here.
Don't remember.
I'm
But
like,
it
am
hasn't
I
gone
on it
away.
anymore? I can't remember, so.
I will make sure that those individuals are notified of our
Okay.
meeting.
There's a lot going on.
Negotiations.
Teacher negotiations are still in process.
All right. Policy.
So we did, Alicia and Carol and I had some time and we just went through, the updates from the legislature
Yeah.
that have passed, the new requirements. Those model policies will be coming out from MSBA yet this fall, and then we'll be working through getting those adopted. We still have the policies that were recommended when we had our audit to be removed or deleted, and so that is the next piece that will be coming through.
Any other board committees?
We can confer as Todd, Lori, and Nicole.
There we go.
There you go.
Thank you, Mr.
We
Raven.
haven't had one for a long time though, right? Because we've had a few, like the last one, the people were sick, so teachers were sick.
All right. From Zed, the building is well underway. Their building is well above ground. There were some slight adjustments to the parking lot. Number of parking spots due to the type of earth that is under it. But there is still more than enough parking spots for staff and students. So, if you haven't had a chance to look at the Zed Twitter or their website, I would invite you to take a look at it. It's pretty amazing to see the development of the new building. So we're quite excited to have that building. So that's all I have. Ms. Selfers?
So, I just want to get this so you can see it here. Couple of things to update you on. One is our facilities planning. So we have created a facilities planning webpage. So you just go to our website, and under facility planning, there's facility planning information. And it just explains the purpose of what we're looking to do. There are 3 pieces here. We have a facility advisory team charge statement, a membership application, and a meeting schedule. And so I'm just gonna flip back to my report here, which is over here. Okay, so within this information, there is also going to be included our advisory team meeting presentation and notes will be in there. Our community surveys, the presentation and information sessions for the community will also be there. That'll be the landing page for all of the information about the facilities process. For the team, we have 23 people interested in participating. 8 of them are staff members and 15 community members.
That's great.
Their first meeting will be October 4th, and they'll explain the charge, their mission, and what this looks like, making sure that they can attend the meetings as scheduled. There may be opportunities in which we invite board members to come and share information, but this is not a venue for admin and board to direct the work. It's to be a community groundswell effort. And so they'll be making a recommendation to the board for the project lists and the kinds of things that should be considered.
Do you feel good about the, that group and its
Very
varying,
exciting.
varying thoughts and experiences?
Yes,
Okay.
wanted to give you an enrollment update. We have 619 students at the high school, 507 at the middle school, 477 at Bear Cave, and 433 at Bonner. On August 27th, we were at 2067, and as of 9/23, which was last week, we were at 2036. I know that you're interested in what the transitions are. So the registrations coming in, we had 7 from Rochester, 2 from other districts, 1 from out of state, and 1 from homeschool that was returning to us. Withdrawals, 8 went back to Rochester, they were open enrolled. 13 went to other school districts, 4 moved out of state. 6 students went to homeschool, 6 students went to an online provider, 4 went to special programming, that's typically ZED, and then 1 high school withdrawal.
So are the Z kids, when they go there, are they not part of our district anymore? I was thinking.
The tuition follows the student.
Okay, I thought that even though they use Z services, they would still be part of our population, no?
No,
Okay,
the tuition follows them. They can still get a Stewartville diploma,
okay,
but they're served at another site.
thank you.
So we have them actually, because they're not part of this 2036 generating revenue.
I understand.
Yep.
Okay.
So that's my update.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Selfers?
No, and I just have something to add.
Yeah.
Homecoming parade for the board.
Oh,
That's going up.
Yeah.
October 8th,
Yeah.
What's that?
October 8th.
Yep. So if you guys want to be in it, just email me or Nicole.
Okay.
And if Nicole said if we're gonna do it, then if you want to add to the candy, to
Yes, we do.
Venmo her $10. and
$10.
She'll take care of it.
Thank you.
Very good.
Yeah, it's a short parade.
Oh, shorter period,
Yeah,
get a ration.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Ravenhorst.
I'll do the same little thing, trailer and little scooter thing.
Perfect. All right. Anything else? All right. With that, I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
I
Second.
have a motion from Mr. Welch and a second from Mr. Ravenhorst. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All All those opposed? That motion carries 5-0 at 8:46.